Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Aloha. Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well. We're having typical Oregon winter weather again. Rain, more rain, and rain for the foreseeable future. But this too shall pass. We get on average 18 inches of rain per year. We're already a little over 19. What can I say? Maybe we'll break 20, and it'll be a calm, calm fire year. We'll see what happens though. Before we get going today, I've got a couple of questions in the queue. But before we get going today, as usual, I want to shout out and talk about my friend Steve over at harneilmedia.com. And I'm going to continue to sing his praises until he tells me to knock it off, because that's just who I am. Look, if you're even toying with the idea of a website, let me recommend Harneil Media as your first stop. Simply because the man is just incredible. I still don't know how he does everything he does and still manages to have a life. Um, Very, very reasonably priced. If you're looking for something like a blog, or maybe you want a web store where you could offer your products and or services to the public at large without paying commissions and listing fees, and without some site that you're listed on advertising your competition off to the side at the same time they're advertising your product, well, then there's no better way to do it than with your own website. And Steve over at Harneil Media makes it really, really easy. If you are experienced with running websites, he'll do as much or as little as you can. If you're like me and you have no idea what you're doing, he'll handle as much or as little as you want him to. He's incredibly competitively priced, and you'll wonder how he gets away with doing it so cheaply. So do yourself a favor. Go over to harneilmedia.com. There's a link to Harneil Media in every video and live stream on this channel. And hit that contact us link and shoot Steve a message. He'll talk with you, then he'll work with you. Again, as much or as little as you want him to do. But he's the only multimedia company that I will ever recommend, simply because he makes it easy and it's 100% personalized service. So, harneilmedia.com, sponsor of marklindsaycnc.com. Thank you, Steve, for everything that you do. I truly appreciate it. So, today, um, we're going to get into a couple of topics. It's an open Q&A. I didn't have a video ready for today. I hope to have one next week. Don't quote me on it, but I hope to have one next week. I'm going to continue on with the Absolute Beginner series for version 12 plus, and I'll get over here into the software and I'm going to explore the rotate selected objects and mirror selected objects, because those are both very useful. And if you, there's a few tricks that this mirror selected objects tool that you'll just be like, oh my gosh, if you've ever had an issue with drawing one side of a design and then drawing another side of a design, you will fall in love with mirror selected objects. But I'll get into that again, hopefully next week. Um, until that time, it's basically open Q&A. And I have a couple of questions up here that we will go ahead and get into. But the first question, I'm going to need a little bit more information. And this is from Kimberly Went. Can you import an image of the golden ratio nicely into a pentagon? Thinking backyard design. Well, if your backyard is the shape of a pentagon, anyway, what I need to know is, what type of image are you talking about? Are you talking about a Fibonacci sequence? And if you're not sure what a Fibonacci sequence is, it is this right here, the Fibonacci sequence. If you're talking about something like that, maybe. If not, I need more info. And that's simply because I don't quite grasp what you're talking about. So it's it's kind of up in the air. So while I'm getting a little bit more information, let's move on to something else here. And let's start with a real easy one here. Michael Koenig asking, can I do a Vcarve on a curved surface with Vcarve Desktop? You should be able to. I have Vcarve Pro. I don't have Vcarve Desktop, so you'll need to check and make sure that this is available. I'm going to demonstrate this in Aspire, but it's identical in Vcarve Pro. Okay. So what we'll do, we'll get a curved surface out here. And this is predicated on your curved surface being a 3D model. A 3D model, yes. The answer is yes. It's very simple. And so let's go over here and we'll just put one of those domes in the middle of my material. And we've got that. All right. Now I'm going to just take my first initial, and as soon as all of my fonts load up, I'll use Times New Roman. What the heck? Good old standby. Everybody's got it. And I've got that. Let me make it smaller so that it fits in my dome. There we go. So I've got my curved surface and I've got my vector that I want to V-carve. So we'll go over here. I'm going to select, well, first I have to do a 3D toolpath. So what I'll do is won't select that. Just for this demonstration, I'll do okay, thickness, yada, yada, yada. Everything is good. I'm going to put a gap above the model of 10 thousandths, which is what I normally do. And we're okay. So I'll use a 1/2-inch ball nose just because it'll make this a lot faster. And I'll do the model boundary with a boundary offset of 0.5. And we'll calculate it. Let's just get my shape here. And we'll preview that toolpath. And it's going to be kind of rough shaped because I don't have the step over set right, but it'll still work. Okay. Let this get through. Evidently I've got my display to maximum, which is why it's taking so long to run this. Bum, bum, bum. And let's get going here. Come on. You can do it faster than this. I know you can. I've got my display set too high and I can't change it now. It's already too late. So I'll just tap dance here. Let me cruise up here and see if Kimberly has added any extra information here. Bum, 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 bum. And let's see here. Nope, I'm not seeing. Yes, I don't know if that means a Fibonacci sequence or if she was answering somebody else's question. So, okay, the lot is the shape of a pentagon, and 1,800 square foot house is the base of the pentagon. Okay. All right. All right. That'll help a little bit. And you want the Fibonacci sequence. Yeah, we can do that. Let me get through this slow thing here, and then we'll get into it. Basically, Kimberly, you can import anything into anything and then line it up any way you want to line it up. That is, if you're doing your design work in Vectric Software, which I have been known to do quite often. As a matter of fact, I designed my Shades and Mustache logo in Vcarve Pro, then imported it into Inkscape at the time and filled in all the colors. And that's why it looks the way it looks. But yeah, I drew it up in Vcarve Pro because I don't know how to use Adobe Illustrator or any of these other, holy cow, this has taken forever, any of these other graphics programs. Man. Okay, well, I think this is good enough to demonstrate this. So this is another tip. If you ever need to stop a simulation in midstream, if you look down here where it says Simulate Toolpath, over here, you'll see a red X. You can click on that red X and it'll get to the next natural stop point within the toolpath, and it'll stop like it just did right there. Okay. So now I've got my shape more or less. I can take my vector here and I can do a Vcarve toolpath. Now, I'll use a flat depth of 0.1 just for giggles. I'm going to get rid of that 15-degree V-bit. And I'm going to go with a 90-degree V-bit. Select it. And I'll use an 1/8" end mill should I need to. And here is the secret. You come down to the bottom here, project toolpath onto 3D model. You put a check mark there. You don't need to worry about start depths. You don't need to, you can use a flat depth if you want to. I'm going to because it's fairly large. And I don't want it to try to cut through the model. But it's that check mark right there that projects this toolpath onto the surface and makes that toolpath follow the shape of this surface. So we'll calculate it. And it might work. It might not work. Let's see. I'm going to run the clearance first that all of this, that 1/8" clearance bit is going to run. And that'll carve that out. Then I'll come down to the Vcarve, and this is going to use the 90-degree V-bit, and it'll finish this whole thing up. Yeah, I should have let it run all the way. But we don't have time for that. So that's how you get that Vcarve toolpath to follow the surface, is that little check mark right there. And that'll take care of it. So, all right, let's close that up. And we'll reset this preview because it's ugly. Go back up to the top and come back in full screen. All right. Okay, email me a photo, but no, I don't always have access in my shop. Yeah, I don't. We can work on this tomorrow evening, Kimberly, if that's all right with you. It'll we'll get into it, but basically, yes, you can import anything into anything. You can import an image into anything. And then it's just a matter of how you want to line it up. So, yeah. All right, Michael, I hope that answers your question. Like I said, just that check mark. Yes. I'm going to change it now, John. Thank you. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, let's take a look at it here. I'm going to close out of my preview. And I'm going to go up into Toolpaths. And I'm going to come down here to Preview Simulation Quality. This affects only this preview window. I have it at maximum because I left it as I was demonstrating something with it and left it there. When usually I'm out here broadcasting like this, I'll take it to high. And that speeds up the preview process, or it should. Let's see. I'm also going to turn off animate the preview. And now let's see if this runs any faster. Look at how much faster that's running. It's not animating it. You don't see the tool. You don't see the tool path run. And isn't that better? Yes, it's much better. Now, let me go back in here and let me take out the clearance tool and just run the 90-degree V-bit. Calculate that. And let's run it. And there you go. That's a better demonstration. See how much faster that works when you're not trying to show off every little piece and get the best quality. So there you go. All right, we'll reset the preview, close that, and come out of here. All righty. So let's see here. We've got another one from Ralph Balchin, who says, when you need something to add to your program, will you spend some time discussing the use of layers? I continue getting layers intertwined and have screwed up several stack text projects. Okay, we can talk about that, Ralph. The thing to remember about layers, let's come back over here into the 2D view. I'm going to delete these two tool paths. Delete all. Boom. Don't need them. Come back over here and I'll get rid of the 3D model. I don't need it. The thing to remember about layers is, first off, when I demonstrate layers, a lot of times I'll leave them named layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. Let's make this easy. Let's go over to layers. I'll add a new layer. And again, add a new layer and add a new layer. Normally, when I'm demonstrating, I leave them named layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4. Name your layers is one of the big tips that'll help you out a lot. If you name layer 1, let's call this design. Now over here in the layers tab, I can just click on it twice, not double click, but click once to select, then click again, and I can rename it. I can also come over here to this icon and rename is one of the options. Since I have that available, I'll go ahead and use it, and I'll call this design. Okay. And I'm going to leave that black. Excuse me. Layer 2, I'm going to rename top text. Hit enter. And I'm going to change the color by using this little rectangle here. I'm going to change that color to blue. So now any vector on this layer is blue. I'm going to come down here And I'm going to name this one bottom text. And I'm going to change the color to red. So now any vector I draw on this layer is red. Then I'll come down here to this one and I'll name it Vcarve text. And I'll change this to green. And we'll use green. So now that differentiates the layers from one another. And it also, because I'm using the colors, it makes them easier to identify. Now, I've got my original text here, and I'm using this in the context of a stack text design, since that's what you were asking about. I've got my letter here. I'm going to leave this on my main design page layer, but I'm also going to copy it to my top text layer. So I'll right click, copy to layer, top text. Okay, so now it looks like it blue, but if I turn off my top, it disappears in blue or in black. And if I turn off the top text, it disappears in blue. Here's where a lot of people get caught short. If you look over here, you'll see that this name is bold. We look up here, we see Vcarve text layer. This is the active layer. So if I do something out here, it's going to be on this layer. What I need to do, and this is what trips most people up, what I need to do is make sure I'm out here in my design tab, and I'm going to add another piece of text. I'm going to use my last name, close, shaboom. That's green. I didn't want that green. That's because I'm on this layer. That's what trips people up. So now what I need to do is I need to move this to the actual layer that I want it on. I want it on the design tab or the design layer. I also want it on the bottom text layer. So right click, move to, oops, I got to select it first. Right click, move to layer, design. That's the first place I want it. Okay. Now I'll right click again, copy to layer, bottom text. Okay. But now I have it on 3 layers. My Vcarve text is the active layer. I'm going to turn off design. I'm going to turn off top text. I'm going to turn off bottom text. Vcarve text, if I turn all this other stuff off, it's no longer there. That's because I moved it to my design layer. Okay. But my Vcarve text is still my active layer. What I need to do, if I'm going to work with it, I need to put it into the layer and activate the layer that I'm actually going to be using. So I'll click on design and it's in red. That's because design is the active layer, but it's turned off. So now I'll turn it on. It goes back to black and it's in bold. The thing to remember about all of this is that you need to make sure you're in the correct active layer. You need to make sure that the layer you want to work on is the active layer. So when you start getting ready to work with stuff, look up here. That tells you what layer you're working in. Click it, and we're going to go into bottom text. We're going to turn off that layer. I'm going to select bottom text to make it active. Now I'm going to shut off my design. Okay. Kurt says, I use layers like they're free giveaways. Lots of them. Think of it as those of you who are of my age group, my generation, you remember the old overhead projectors that they would use in school. There's a big light table that had that arm that stuck up and a lens out the front. And the teacher would take a transparency, a piece of clear plastic with drawing or writing on it, and drop it on that light table, and it would project it onto the screen in front of the class. Then she could take another transparency and lay it over the top of that to add more text or more lines to a drawing. And then another one and stack it on top of that. So you could actually put all of these things together, stacked one on top of another, and turn those two on and show both of these layers at the same time, or you can shut one off. Now, if you have these both turned on and you turn off the active layer, the title will be in red, whether you're in this layer manager, whether you're looking up here at your layer manager up on top, or whether you go into the layers tab over here. It's in red to let you know that your active layer is not visible. So if I come out here and let's say for giggles, I add a rectangle, suddenly the layer becomes active because I've added something to that layer when it was not visible. It's now visible, warning me you're working in this layer, you're not working with this layer or this layer or this layer. So that's where people get confused the most, is working in a layer that they don't mean to be working in. So Ray is asking, can you view a layer and not be able to modify? For example, draw vines around the M, but not be able to modify the M. Yes. And we do that up here. Let me go turn off. Let me make top text my active layer, turn off my bottom text. We come right over here to this icon. We put lock. Now you've locked that layer. Top text is my active layer, and I'll draw my rectangle. Draw a couple of these rectangles. It's locked. I can add to it, but I can't select it to delete it. See, I'm trying to select it to delete those. I can Control Z, but I can't select the vector to change it because it's locked. Okay? So, let's see here. My problem was having duplicate vectors and the correct toolpath was not carved. Again, okay, that gets into something a little bit different. And that is associating a toolpath with a layer. So, and this is not set up for stack text, okay? I haven't gone through and done any of that stuff. Now I've got a layer, it's locked. I can't select anything to change it or modify it. But I can still come over here, do a Vcarve toolpath. I'll go ahead and leave everything. I'm not going to use the clearance tool, however. Now here's something for you, Ralph. You come down to do this, go into the vector selection. And what you want to do is you want to select all the closed vectors, on selected layers only. You want to do top text. You see we've got that icon that shows that it's locked. Now, this is crucial. Come down here, associate with the toolpath. Okay? Close, and we see our vector selection has gone to automatic. Then we'll calculate it. Now, because we've associated that layer with this toolpath, anything on this layer will get cut. So we'll preview it. There we go. We're good. Now, close, come over, and oops, wrong one. I want to go into the 2D view. Let's add a star up here. You know what that means. Always trust your car to the man that wears a star. Now, see, I didn't draw that in the right place. I can't even move it because it's locked. So I'll come up here and unlock it. Now I can select my star and move it. I can lock it again. I can leave it unlocked. No big deal. Now I can come over here and I can recalculate. And because I have associated this toolpath with this layer, it's now going to cut the star as well. Okay. So reset, preview, and shaboom. So associating that toolpath with that layer will make sure that whatever is on that layer gets cut. Okay. So make sure you're in the proper layer when you're designing. Over here, let's reset, close, go back over, jump into the 2D view. Make sure that you have the correct layer active and make sure that none of the other layers are turned on or selected when you associate. And this is crucial. Associate with the toolpath has to be checked. Otherwise, that's not going to work. Okay. And that helps you out in the long run in that you can come along, change names, change dates, recalculate the toolpath, and you're ready to cut the next one. This is especially true of stack text designs because a lot of people like them for weddings, and you're very rarely going to make more than one per wedding. But that's a quick and easy way of making this stack text project. Save it as a template file, then come in, change the names, the dates, recalculate everything, and then cut it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. So, if you're in the design layer, do the colors associated with the layers turned off show as black? If you're in the design layer, so let's go up here, let's turn it on. And the design layer is my active layer. because I still have top text turned on, you will see it in blue. Okay. If I turn it off, top text, now you see it in black. And you no longer see that star because it's just on that layer. Okay. There's a lot that can be done with layers, and there's a lot that's confusing with layers. They're there, and a lot of people don't even use layers at all, simply because they get confused with them. And not every project needs layers. I do a good portion of my projects and don't even use layers. So it just depends on what you're doing. So, okay, Dave Braden adds a wrinkle here. Doing a project that has 2 sheets, are the layers separated for each sheet? Not in version 12. It's coming. Not in version 12. You can't associate a layer with a sheet. It's coming. Okay. Well, I can just go ahead and say it. I don't have to whisper nothing. That's coming in version 12. You'll be able to associate layers with sheets. Okay. So, not yet. And no, I don't know when 12.5 is coming out. Nobody does. We can only speculate. Okay. Let's see. Let me get back in here. Does that answer your question, Ralph? Does that make things a little bit easier? I did do a video on stacked text, easily the most requested video I ever did. And I'll put a link down in the description as soon as we're finished here. Just wrote myself a note. I will put a link in the description as soon as we're done live. So if you have further questions, let me know. But if that answers your question, I'm going to go ahead and jump to some of these others. I've got 5 more in the stack here. Let's see here. Mark, can you talk about the pros and cons of rest machining? Yes. Rest machining, let me entertain you. Let me make another sheet, and I'll just add new. I'll just call it sheet 2, enter, and we'll jump over to that sheet. And again, I'll do, what am I going to do? I'll revert back to good old Wally Gator. And sad to say that Wally is only available on Aspire. He's not a Vcarve model, but he's got just enough detail to cheese me off, and he makes a good demonstration. So, let's see here. Okay, Ralph says, thanks, Mark. I just need to be careful with layers, and I'll continue to use and associating with Toolpath. Yeah, it's, and Steve, right there, ba-boom, right on the money every time. Yes, there's my stack text video, and again, I'll put a link in the description as soon as we're done live here. Wally's got a little bit of detail, but just enough to cheese me off, but not enough to be overly dramatic, if you get my drift. So let's go over and let's do a a 3D finishing toolpath. Of course, it's going to send me into material setup. I'll put a gap of 0.01 above the model. He's only a 1/2 inch thick. Okay, we're good there. A little more than a 1/2 inch, actually. We're all right. Okay, now, this would be an extreme case. Let's look at using an 1/8 inch ball nose. That's more of a 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. That's more realistic. We're going to do modeled boundary, and I'll go with a 1/4 inch boundary offset. And what that means is the bit's going to cut outward away from the model by a 1/4 inch. Fair warning, okay? Fair warning. If you use material boundary, it's going to go outside of your material a 1/4 inch. If you use a zero plane, if you have Wally down in a dish and you use model boundary, the minute you add a zero plane, it becomes part of the model. So fair warning, if you use model boundary with a zero plane or material boundary with or without a zero plane, any boundary offset you set is going to carve off of the material by the distance of that boundary offset. Okay? So be careful when using either of these. Usually I draw a vector around the model, but not this time. I'm just going to go with this. Let's see, boundary offset of 1/4 inch and using an 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. Now, they all, excuse me, Vectric added rest machining as built into the 3D finishing toolpath by adding the ability to use more than one bit within the toolpath. Rest machining is not quite an acronym, but close. It's a contraction of remaining stock. RE from remaining and ST from stock. What's going to happen now is it's going to carve away everything it can with this 1/8 inch ball nose, and everything the 1/8 inch ball nose can't get, it's going to use the 1/16 inch ball nose to carve. So it's actually going to create two tool paths. What this will do is make it carve a lot faster than if you just use the 1/16 of an inch ball nose, because most of it's going to get cleared away by the 1/8 inch ball nose. Okay, so we'll come down here, and here's where we get into a little bit of we'll see. Rest machining, the minimum detail level you want. This is something you got to play with. The default is the center. If you don't need super fine detail, you can adjust this down towards coarse, down here. If you do need super fine detail, you can drag it up this way. The default is the center. I'm going to double click that center line and put it right in the middle, and we'll see what it looks like. Preview early, preview often. That's my motto. Calculate it, and we see it's made two tool paths. This is the first tool path. It's going to carve away most of the material. Turn that off, and we'll turn this on. This is all that 1/16 of inch end mill is going to carve. Okay. I forgot to mention one thing. Let me go back into the toolpath. You have a separate boundary offset for rest machining. Now, when we looked at that 1/16 of an inch, which is the lighter blue in this case, you can see it's not coming out very far. I'm going to go ahead and make it the same as the boundary offset for my clearance, 0.25, just so we can see it. Okay. And that, there we go. And now I'll calculate. So the rest machining is going to come out the same distance as the 3D finish, the clearance. Okay. So we'll do the first one. And there's Wally. We've got some fairly decent detail here, but here around his eyes, his mouth, that 1/8 inch bit just isn't quite cutting it. And we see some roughness up in here that the 1/8 inch bit can only go so far. So now we look at the 3D finish using the 1/16 of an inch bit. We can't really see much of a difference until we zoom in, and we see a lot more detail right here. Our edges are a little bit better, but it's still kind of nasty because I didn't use a higher resolution. I'm using a lower resolution to speed it up. Now, one advantage is you reduce machine time. If we look at the total machine time for this, we're looking at this first one with the 1/8 inch bit takes 25 minutes. This one with the 1/16 inch bit takes an hour and a half. Okay. But let's go back and take a look at something. If I come back in here and I don't use a boundary offset, and this is going to illustrate one of the cons. Calculate it. All right. Now we'll reset the preview. Now we'll preview this one first. Again, looks pretty decent. But here I don't have any kind of a offset. When I preview that, it cleaned up around the edges and defined these rectangles a little bit. But if I zoom in here and look, we can see a little shadow line right there. Okay. This comes down to modeling resolution and the diameter of the bit. We can really get down in the weeds here. Okay. Won't the simulation resolution also make a difference in how you see the results on screen? Yes, and that's all it affects. That's the simulation resolution up here. Preview simulation quality. Okay. But if we look down here, we can see a little shadow line right there. It's because we didn't use that boundary offset. And like I said, this gets way down in the weeds. When you first set up your job, you set your modeling resolution. Okay. You're dividing up the surface of the material. In this case, because I have it on its lowest setting, I've divided up the surface of this material into 1 million points or pixels. Okay. Because, cancel, because the tip of this bit is smaller, it can carve pixels that the 1/8 inch bit can't. that usually means you're going to get this little shadow line where your rest machining bit, this smaller bit, will actually cut deeper than that 1/8" bit. So the way to combat that, and I'll make it a little bit, let me reset the preview. I shouldn't have done that. Let me go ahead and do this here. Preview. Then I think I should be able to do that. Nope, it's going to make me redo it all anyway. Okay, let's see how that does. That's not too awful bad. I think I can live with this. All right. Now I'll go back into the toolpath and I'm going to change this to my rest machining boundary offset. Let's make it visible to 5. Calculate. Boom. Now I've already done that. Let me calculate. Let me do that. I'm trying to make this shadow line more visible. Okay. And that didn't do anything. It didn't make it more visible or less visible. There is a shadow line. You can't really see it here in the preview. But suffice it to say, if you bring that boundary offset out to the same boundary offset you have out here, you will get rid of that shadow line. There won't be one at all. But again, you're also taking a chance that you're not going to be carving into something else. By making that offset, it's not just going out here, it's also going up in here. So you may be recarving something up in here that you didn't want to carve into. You may be creating shadow lines out here. You may also be creating shadow lines up here. If we look at where this goes, you see how it's recarving up in this area as well. So this is something you need to play with. It may work out perfectly for you. It may not. A lot of people don't like rest machining at all. And so what they'll do is just use the smallest bit and not use a larger bit. That works okay if you don't mind the extended finishing time. Now we're going to do the whole thing with that 1/16" bit. Let's check out. It only added about 12 minutes to the machine time, but depending upon how intricate your design is out here, it could double or triple it. So it's a balancing act. They both have their place and they both work very well. Rest machining I use on occasion, but generally speaking, not really. I'll just go ahead and carve the whole thing with the smaller bit, you know. So Kurt has over at Crafty Jans has a tip. Says when I do rest machining, I like to add the cross hatch texture that hides the tooling marks. And what Kurt is talking about is adding a texture to the background. And yes, it does hide those machining marks. And I will be doing a video on that soon. I'm definitely going to do these two icons here are going to be my next video. I may do that that crosshash texture as a separate video after that. So Excuse me. Wendell says you need to get the Z0 both bits the same and have the machine with good repeatability. Yes, that is true. And um, it's good that you mentioned that, Wendell, because machine repeatability, excuse me, boy, machine repeatability is something that a lot of people don't discuss because you have varying degrees of repeatability. For instance, repeatability on my Avid CNC is 1 thou. So there's 1 thou. The repeatability on my touch plate is 1 thou. So there's two, you know, so things can compound. Now you add that with what we tend to do is like if I'm going to surface one of these pieces of material here that's on, I'm using my cursor like you can see it. If I'm going to surface one of these pieces of sapele here, and I set my Z0 to the surface, my machine is repeatable within 1 thou, and my touch plate is repeatable within 1 thou. But that does not necessarily mean I'm going to get all three of these pieces of material to the exact same thickness. They could be a few thou off either way. So the potential is there for this piece to be 4 thou thinner or thicker than this piece. Now, that's nothing to do with the software. That's nothing to do with Vcarve or Aspire. And you did nothing wrong. It's the repeatability that's built into that machine. For woodworking, 1 thou of repeatability, dude, I'm used to using hand tools and a tape measure, and the lines on my tape measure ain't that small. So 4 thou, I'm gonna sand off 4 thou with 220 grit. So you know, but it is a valid discussion to have. So I hope that answers that, Brooks. They rest machining has its place, and generally speaking, it is dependent on the project. Because, for instance, I've said it before and I'll say it again, if you're doing like a jewelry box lid or the back of a hand mirror or something that's going to be held in your hand and seen close up, yeah, you want all that detail. But if it's something that's going to be hanging on the end of your house, like a 2 foot diameter barn star, I'm going to carve that with my 1/2 inch bit with a fairly large step over because it's going to be 16 feet uh, up off the ground, and I'm never going to get close enough to see anything really, other than the fact that, hey, it's a white barn star. So the project will dictate. And that also goes for Kimberly's question about for which type of carve would you opt for, a ball nose versus a tapered ball nose? Tend to use a tapered ball nose on 3D carves almost exclusively. Whereas standard ball nose bits, if you're hogging out a lot, well, first, if you want that radius on a bottom, if I'm creating a round pocket and I want that radius where the bottom meets the side, I might use a ball nose bit for that, a standard ball nose. But it's anywhere that I want to hog a lot of material out quickly and not worry about snapping the tip on a tapered ball nose bit. The only standard ball nose bits I have are 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. I don't have anything smaller on the standard ball nose front. Anything smaller than a 1/4 inch is done on the is done with a tapered ball nose. So generally speaking, well, not generally speaking, because I don't have any smaller standard ball nose bits. So Alan Williamson says, how do you make a straight line straight? When I zoom in, there is always small steps in the line. Small steps doesn't necessarily mean that your straight line isn't straight. Let me jump in over here and we'll take this up to the top. Just a second. I got a cough coming. Okay. Yeah, it's springtime. Things is blooming. All right. Let's see here. We'll go back over to the 2D view and we'll get rid of, well, I'm not going to get rid of Wally. I'll go back over to my first sheet by double clicking that first sheet. Now, you want to draw a line and you want it to be straight. This is where you make sure you have geometry snapping and smart snapping turned on. Specifically smart snapping. Smart snapping is going to help you in this endeavor, Alan. We'll come over here and I'll click. Now we've got several ways we can draw a line. One is just freehand out here. You see this guideline? You see how my cursor says 0.0? Right now we're at length L 7.5, angle 0.0. That's a straight line. Click. Then space bar to accept that line. Now, if you look, as I zoom in, you may see little zigzags on occasion. But those zigzags aren't there. What it is that's your screen refreshing as you zoom in. Now, I can come in here with it selected, go into node editing. There are two nodes, start point and stop point. Come out of node editing. Let's draw one that's a little bit crooked. Click to start my line, and we'll come down here. You see how that snapped straight horizontal? That's what smart snapping is for. With it turned off, I can come to any angle and it doesn't snap at all. Okay. Go back into smart snapping and it'll snap in 15-degree increments. See how that A 15.0, it snapped to a 15-degree increment. But I'm going to make one just a little bit off here, 2.2 degree angle, and then spacebar to accept that line. Now is when we get that stepping, because pixel resolution will not allow it. The pixel resolution of the monitor doesn't allow it to be a smooth line. And that's to Jay Scotia's point. You can't display pixels halfway between lines. Exactly. Now, another way to draw a line that doesn't rely on how steady your hand is, Alan, we'll start the line here. And we'll come out here where we want the line to start. Click, and I'm going to drag in a direction, but I'm not going to click. I'm not even going to touch the mouse. Instead, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to set an angle. I want an angle of 0. And I want a length of 7 inches. Then I'll click Add, and that created my 7-inch line. Perfectly straight because my angle was 0. Okay? And again, I have to spacebar to accept that line. Well, nope, I spacebarred and it did it again. Control Z, close. And there's my line. And again, start point, end point. Node editing, there we go. So there is always more than one way to skin the proverbial cat. It comes down to whichever way you prefer. You can draw a line and rely on smart snapping, or you can use these here, these points here. When you're in the 3D view, things get a little bit dicier because you have to be right on top of what you're drawing. And that's because of a phenomenon known as parallax. If you are off, let's do an extreme example here. No, let's do that. And I go to draw a line out here. It's going to tell me where I am, but am I sure where this is actually being drawn? And am I certain this is straight? Now I can come out here and go 7, click, and then click off. And I think I have a straight line, but it doesn't look straight. But if I come over here and look at it straight down, okay, it is straight. But this isn't lined up with this, which is what I wanted. So now I got to play around a little bit. You get my point. So there's more than one way to skin a cat. You can use various different ways of drawing a straight line, and just uh, use whichever way works best for you. So let's see here. Let's see. Kurt over at Crafty Jan says, Mark, you talked about sanding mops. Can you maybe talk about them just a bit in regards to light sanding on 3D carves and show off a few? I don't have any examples of my 3D carves on this computer. So that might be something I could show on the members only side, Kurt, but I don't have any examples of 3D carves out here right now. But I can show you the sanding tools that I use. Let me run over here and grab them real fast. I use, boy, let's get these out here. There we go. Oops, nope, grabbed the wrong one. Yeah. Keep everything over in my paint locker. I use these on corded drills. All right. This one is 240 grit, and this one is 400 grit. This is more for those little intricate pieces, as I was talking about, that you're going to be holding in your hand, and you need real good detail. But in the metal world, these are mainly used for polishing. If you've got something big that you're cleaning up fuzzies off of and what have you, this is really not going to do much. It doesn't remove much material at all. You can polish aluminum with this just about. That's 400 grit. This, on the other hand, being 240, is a little bit more aggressive, but you really, really have to try to remove detail when using this. I mean, and I use these on a corded drill, and I just go over it with this brush, and it removes the fuzzies and sands 3D carves. And I'll put a link to this in the description. I have links, I just don't have them on this computer. They will be they will be affiliate links, but those are the main ones that I use. And the way affiliate links works is if you click on the affiliate link and go over there and buy one, I get like a small commission out of it at no extra cost to you. So it's a way to support the channel if you'd like. Now, when I get real nitpicky and get down into like Vcarves and things of that nature, I use these They're made by Scotch-Brite, and they're called a radial disc. And it's like 3 to 4 of these discs on a 1/8 inch arbor. And these things are miracles. I use the white ones and the yellow ones. Don't get afraid. Don't get gun shy when you see the grits. These have their own grit system. This is 120 grit. It does not translate to 120 grit sandpaper. These are used for final finishing. The yellow ones are 80 grit. Again, their own grit system. It's not the same as 80 grit sandpaper. Okay. That's a little bit more coarse than this, and it's used for when I've got a lot of, details to sand out. These are, it's crazy how good these are. Use these in my Dremel, and you need to slow down the RPMs. Otherwise, you will wear them out in like a heartbeat. But you stack 3 or 4 of them up on a on the little what do you call it, arbor, and just go for it. But turn down the RPMs of the Dremel. And I'll put affiliate links to all 4 of these, the white and yellow, and these 2 nylon sanding brushes. They are nylon, and the brush has a abrasive embedded in it. And I use both. I'll start with the 400, and if that's not doing enough, I'll use the 240 and just go over it, then come back over it. The whole thing with the 400, excuse me, the whole thing with the 400, just so I've got an even finish. I developed the hiccups and I don't know how. It's not like I'm sitting here eating or drinking or anything. So again, I'll put links to all of that down in the description of this live stream as soon as we're finished live. But those are not the only types that you can get. I use those because they're not expensive, number one, and they last pretty decent. I mean, I've had this one, the 400 grit one. Oh, no, that's this one. I've had this for about 8 years now, and it still works like day one. So, I have used it chucked in my drill press, set at, oh, maybe 1800 RPM, something like that in my drill press, 1800 to 2000 RPM. And then whatever RPM my corded skill half-inch drill runs at. And I use the corded drill simply because it doesn't burn out batteries half as fast. And with that bigger drill motor, it stays cool, and I can sit there and sand with it for however long I need to sand with it, and I'm not worried about any of that problem at all. Let's see here. There was another question. There are a couple of questions. Okay, Ray Dixon, when measuring, is there a way to keep the measurements displayed like the older versions did? Yes. That's what you're talking about, Ray, is the difference between measuring and dimensioning. Okay, let's go into, let's turn on top text, turn off the design tab. Okay, we'll come out here. Measuring is down here, edit objects. And here I can measure between 2 points. I'm going to go from here to here and measure that. So I click here and I click there, and that's giving me the measurement. Okay. You're looking for dimensions, Ray. Dimensions is up here under create vectors. We'll click on dimension. Let it load. You can do it. I'm going to get a length dimension, and I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click on this corner, and I'll click on this corner. Then I'm going to draw it down to about right here. Click again. And that gives me that same measurement, but it's a dimension line. It's also a vector that can be edited, but you don't want to mess with it. Okay. I can ungroup and nothing happens. Ungroup, nothing happens. It's an object. The only way I can edit it is to go back into dimension. Come along. I can't even do that. I can't even do that. I have to draw another dimension. So I can't edit it at all. What I was going to try to do was get a dimension, move this dimension line to here, for example. So that's the difference between a measurement and a dimension. And well pointed out by Dwayne, if we come up here, dimensions are on their own layer. Okay? And that color is gray. Okay? You can carve the dimensions, however. Okay? So, come over here, selected. Let's V-carve the dimensions. Not going to worry about a flat depth. I'm not going to use a clearance tool. That is so tiny. I'm going to select a 1/4 inch 15-degree V-bit. Calculate. It's not going to do it. It's not going to do it. Okay. Close. Let me right click. Can I convert that to curves? I can't convert to curves. Oopsie. Can't carve them. So, let's see. Ellen here is saying Amazon has the same sanding puff balls in larger amounts. I go through tons of those things. If you're talking about the Scotch-Brite looking puffy balls, I don't like those very much. I have tried them. See, I think I ended up throwing that out because I don't like it. I'm not much for those Scotch-Brite puffy ball things. I much prefer the radial discs. So, let's see. Did I associate the toolpath with a layer? No, I did not. If you mean this here, no, I did not associate. And again, remember, the dimensions are on their own layer, and it has not been associated with any toolpath. So, let's see here. So no, Jim, you can't carve it. But what you can do is draw it yourself. Then carve those. John Thompson, as he says, you would have to draw it as a vector, then carve it, but you could get the dimensions first to know the size you need to enter. Exactly. So. I mean, your Vcarve 1 toolpath, I thought you associated it with the top text. Yes, I did, but I wasn't attempting to do that on another layer. So the point being is it wouldn't let me create vectors. Let me go here and see if I understand what you're saying. Okay, dimensions is now my active layer. Okay. Select it. Can I V-carve it? No. This is an object. It's not vectors. Okay. I think that's what you were getting to, that I was in another active layer and I was not in the dimensions layer. So still, you cannot carve these. You would have to hand draw them. So, okay. Carrie Casella. I had something happen that I haven't seen before in Vcarve Toolpath. I used a 1/8 inch bit for clearing instead of a 1/4 inch bit. I must have missed half of this. I got to scroll back up. Carrie, I apologize. I must have missed the other half. Looking. And I don't see the other half of your question, Carrie. If there is another half. Yeah, I don't see anything else. It used an 1/8 inch bit for clearing instead of a 1/4 inch bit. You must have selected the bit. Now, the thing to remember is these tool paths will remember the last bits that you used. So if you, for instance, when we did the demo of this M, it remembered the 90-degree V bit and the 1/8 inch end mill. Okay. So if I remove that, select a 1/4 inch end mill for giggles, select, it's not going to create a toolpath because it's too big. But the next time I go into a toolpath, a Vcarve toolpath, I'll just do it. And we'll do that. Okay. Got my vector selected. All right. It's going to clear that out. It's going to create. Let's go ahead and preview visible. Ba-boom. Now, when I go into, I'll reset the preview, close. I go into the Vcarve toolpath, it remembers those tools. There is no default. When you go into a toolpath, for instance, quick engrave toolpath, there has to be something there. You can't have that blank. There has to be something there. Okay. So, all right. Okay, well, maybe this, okay, I used an 1/8 inch and a 1/4 inch for clearing. Okay, maybe this is, let me get back into this. Maybe this is what happened. Select and use 1/8 inch, select. If you're using both of them, the order matters, but it only matters as far as the naming convention, okay? I've got the 1/4 inch on top, the 1/8 inch on the bottom. And let's calculate. Now let's look at what we've got here. I've got carve 2, which is what the ones I just calculated. Clear 1 uses the 1/4 inch end mill. Clear 2 uses the 1/8 inch end mill. Okay. Let's go back into it, and I'm going to move the 1/8 inch up on top. Okay. Calculate. You see, it's not going to let me do this because the 1/8 inch end mill is first. It's going to carve everything. So it's going to create, there's not going to be anything left for this 1/4 inch bit to carve. So it's telling me that it's going to produce an empty toolpath. Okay. And there it is. Now, if I go up here to clear 2, which uses the 1/4" end mill, and I make it visible, it's an empty tool path. It's not going to cut anything. Everything's being cut by the 1/8 inch. Turn that off, turn this on, everything's being cut by the 1/8 inch. So if you used 2 bits, I use the 1/8 inch bit for the big clearing area and a 1/4 for the small area. That 1/8 inch bit is gonna carve everything because it can reach everything that 1/4 inch can reach. So I don't know if that answers your question, but if that's a concern, only make sure that they're in the correct order. Bring that 1/8 inch back down beneath. So I've got my larger bit on top going progressively smaller down below. Okay. Calculate. And now this one is using the 1/4 inch. This one's using the 1/8 inch. And this one's using the V bit. So what do the light cyan lines in the 3D view mean? It depends on what you're talking about. If we're over here on the toolpath side, these light cyan, if we're in the preview window, the light lines are plunge moves. Okay? They're plunge moves. If we're not in the preview window and we're just in the 3D view, let's go back over here. The only light cyan lines you will see are when you're in a drawing tool. You come up here and you could just barely make them out. You've got guides, and that's when you have snapping turned on. These lines here are showing me I'm at the center of my project in Y. And over here, it's showing me that I'm at the center of my project in X. And now they're showing me, come on. There we go. Now I'm at the center of my X and Y. Close. Control Z. Okay. I hope that answers that. Yes, when you are reading a toolpath out here in the preview, we'll look at this, okay? The red lines are rapid moves. My X0, Y0 is in the center of my material. So the red is a rapid move over to here where it's going to make its first plunge cut. And it's going to start cutting till it gets around out here. Green is a retract. It's going to come up out of here and make a rapid move over this direction where it's going to plunge and start cutting. Then you can see this red here. This is down in the material. It's going to cut this out, move over, cut this out, move over, cut this out, move over. The dark blue lines are actual cuts. So the cyan, light blue, is a plunge. The green is a retract. Red is a rapid move where the tool is not in the material. And dark blue is a cut where the tool is down in the material. That's how you read a tool path in the preview window. Okay. Oops. You're very welcome. I hope that helps. All right. Let's see. We actually got through all of the questions. Thank you for the great questions. This is the kind of thing I like when I get a lot of questions like this, and it's stuff that I can answer. So, let's see what's going to happen next week. I hope to have the video finished for rotating selected objects and mirroring selected objects, and then we'll do a Q&A on that plus any of your other questions. Tomorrow evening on the members only live stream, Ray doesn't know it, but Ray handed me the perfect opportunity to do some demonstrating for, we're going to import a 3D model for a two-sided project. Then we're going to modify that 3D model. But I'm going to do it all in Vcarve Pro. I'm not going to use Aspire. I know Ray has Aspire, but I'm going to do it in Vcarve Pro to show that this kind of thing can be done. So we're going to do that, and we're going to do a couple of other things, plus the pictures that you members have sent me. We're going to get into your projects. We're going to talk about them. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, or if you'd like to get information on becoming a channel member, so you can be part of the few, the proud, the elite, and get involved in the super secret Facebook group and our highly super secret live chat, secret handshake, the whole thing. Well, there's the easy way to do it is look down below this video panel. You'll see the word join. Click on that. Another panel is going to pop up. The video will play, tell you all about channel membership. We got a great group of people over there. We'd love to have you join us. We do members only live streams. Members get early access to my videos and a bunch of other cool stuff. You'll know if you join. Anyway, for everybody else, see you next week, same time, same channel, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Going through the Rolodex in my brain, that's all I wanted to say. Yes, thank you for spending part of your Sunday with me. Now go make some chips. Go do something cool. Go have some fun. Life's too short to sit around watching YouTube videos. Get out of here. Y'all take care, and thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.